CSIS 2440 is filmed before a live studio audience.
So what the heck is a Diastic machine? Anybody heard of this before? We talked about it briefly the other day. What is it?
It's a poetry algorithm created by Tex and Mac.
We now know Daniel can read. Very good. Excellent. That is correct. It's a poetry algorithm. And this is, when I say algorithm, it's like pre-computers algorithm. This was an idea on how to generate a poem without, this is not a computer thing. Now we're going to make a program that does it, but let's make sure we understand what the idea is and what it's kind of used for. So you start off with, you have a humongous text file, and I'm going to show you where to get these and everything. We have a big text file, and in the text file, it's just some story, right? It really is, let's back up. It's not really a text file. In our case, it will be because it's computers, but in the real world, when this was not a computer thing, they would have some story that was written by somebody else when we didn't have search engines, right? And you would take a phrase or a word, and that would be your seed word or seed phrase. So you can see here in the example, I have a seed phrase of magic show. So the idea would be is you would manually search through the book or the story for a word where the first letter of the first word is matching the first letter of M, my seed word. Then the second word, the second letter would match the second letter of my seed word, A. And then the third word, G, matching G, and so forth. So you can see M, A, G, I, C, and then the next line, S, H, O, W. Okay? The idea was, A, that can just be your poem if you wanted. Put a longer phrase in there, 5 or 6 words, and poof, you have this weird random poem. That's one idea. The other idea is you use it to start your brain thinking, right? You enter your seed word, it makes this sort of quasi-poem here, and then you look at it and go, oh, that inspires me to write this poem, right? That's how it's been used. So we're going to build all of this, but we're going to break it into a couple of pieces here. So number one, first of all, we have to get a story, a text file, right? A plain text document that's full of all these words, right? Then, now how would we even do this with a text file where I have some seed word? What could I do? Just think about that for a minute. Just think through, what would you do? What could you do with a text file?
Each character, and then your seed word would be in an array.
Okay, so we have to parse every word in the text file, right? And so, is there an easier way to do this? Like read the text file every time? Is there a better way to do that?
Stored in a giant array.
Stored in an array?
Of characters.
Yeah.
Here's character array, check the index to match the position of each word's array index character.
Okay, so you could do something like that, where you stored an array and you search through the array every time. There's an even easier way, though. Put it in a database. So here's what I want to do, is take the text file and parse through it and grab every single word in the text file and dump it into a database. Then all of the seed word stuff that we're going to do, we'll search through the database and pull the words out of there. You can do it by parsing the text file. I think it'll be harder. Even if it's easier, I want to show you this database way, because what we're about to look at is something that happens all the time in the real world, where I'm going to write a PHP program that's not a web page. It's just a program that's just going to run something one time, or I could reuse it later if I wanted to, but it's just sort of a little tool in my toolbox, right? So I already wrote it. We're going to walk through what I wrote, and we'll take a look at what it does. But what this thing will do, it allows you to pass in a text file and a table name and a field name, and then it parses the text file, and it'll get rid of all the weird characters, like spaces and commas and whatever, and get rid of all that, and then it'll take every word and dump it into a database, right? It's pretty slick. So let's take a look at that. And by the way, the assignment for this requires that you do it the database way. So you'll have to do something like what I'm doing. If you have a better way to get it in the database, that's fine. So it's called the multi-exploder, right? So this is the code. It's not super long. We'll walk through each piece of it a little bit at a time here. First of all, this is a file that's called orange, or 5orange.txt, and I'll show you that file real quick. It's right here. It's just a story called the 5orange pips. I found it on the internet, and I'll show you where to get these in a few minutes. But here we go, just a bunch of stuff, okay? And then I created a database, or sorry, a table called orange, and the field's called name, right? And the name's gonna be where we put that word, okay? Where we put each of those words. And I'll show you that I've already run it, and here you can see, if I show 500 per page, there's still 2,000 records-ish, and every word, and there are no duplicates either. So we're gonna do this with this function here, and I'm not gonna give you this code. You'll see pieces of it on the screen, but I want you to figure out your own way to do this. But let's talk about what I did. Here's the function itself, starts on line 5. You can see the comments quite clearly. I take the file that's being passed in, orange text, and I open it a stream, right? Then I read it into this array, into this variable here. If I were to echo that out, it would just be one variable called t that just has the entire contents of the text file, right? Then I go through and I do some regular expression on here to get rid of everything but the spaces, okay? So it's, and the words, the actual letters, right? So it just leaves me all the words, basically. Then I explode that into an array called words. So now at this point, if I did a var dump of words, you'd see an array with more like 8,000 words in it, because there would be duplicates at this point. We haven't got the duplicates out, right? So this would be a huge array. I think it ended up being like 5,300 or something, if I remember right. So now we're going to remove all the words that are less than 3 from the array, because like the word I, that will never really be used in this, right? It's the only time it would work is if it's the first letter. So if my very first letter in my seed word starts with an I. So I figured I'd just get rid of all the small words, right? And if I want to change that, maybe I could make, change it to 5 or something like that, right? But we're going to go with 3. That's good. So I go through the array, and I get the words array, and I just use this function called array splice. Now notice what's going on here. I'm going to talk about a couple things. Look at how I'm looping through the array. What am I doing? I'm looping through it backwards, right? The reason I'm doing that, does everybody get that I am doing that, right? You see what's happening there? I'm starting with the last element, and as long as we're greater than 0, I'm going to decrement. The reason for that is because this array splice thing right here. This function, you pass it in the array, which element you want to remove, and from that point, how many do you want to remove? So if I just didn't put a 1 there, it would just remove everything from that element to the end. So try to visualize what's going to happen if you're looping through the array forward. 0, 1, 2, 3, I decide to splice out number 4. It goes away. What happens to element 5? It becomes element number 4. So element number 5 becomes element number 4, and then old number 6 becomes 5. So when I advance to number 5, what used to be 5 never even gets looked at. Does everybody see that? So if you go backwards, that won't happen. If you start at the end and go backwards, you'll avoid that. And if you sit down with pen and paper and think about it, that'll make some sense, right? Okay. All right, so next thing, we're removing the duplicates from the array. This is another new function we haven't talked about called array unique. If I run this array unique function on the array, and there's a couple of different constants you can choose to tell it how you want to compare the values to be equal to each other. And so I want to do it as a string. I want to compare them as strings. So when all is said and done, line 26, the words array is now removed all the duplicates. So now I have a nice clean array that all of the weird little characters are gone and everything, all right? Here I did a connection. Notice I didn't bother making constants here like we have in the past because I'm just doing it quickly. It's a one-time thing. I'm just going to run one time here. Then next up, you can see my comment here, get all the records from the table that's passed in and put them in this list array. And we're going to use that down here to prevent duplicate entries into the database, right? So this is just an empty variable. I'm writing a simple statement that says select star from the table that the user told me to. I get the results, I loop through it, and I put every single value from that table into the list array right here, okay? So that's just sitting there holding every single record. So that is an array of the 2,000, right? That's already in the database in this case. Or if it's a brand new table, nothing, right? Now that I have that list though, I'm gonna start my inserts. Now I'm using a syntax here that if you haven't taken my 1550, you may not recognize this. It's a little trickier, but it's the only way that this will work without crashing your MySQL, okay? I'll show you roughly what the idea is though. You guys know already about this, right? Insert into whatever the table's called. It's called orange. And we say the field called name, and we say values, and we're gonna put in the word picture or something like that, right? And then if you're gonna insert another one, you could say lab, and another one, and you say chicken, right? Whatever word you're putting in. Well, if you're gonna do multiple ones at one time, think about what's gonna happen if I did it the way I'm doing on the screen. I'd have 2,000 queries exactly like that I would then try to run all at once. 2,000 separate queries to the database, separate commands to the database. Well, you can turn this all into one command by doing this. You can actually do this syntax here. Now you get this, insert into orange, name, values, then that's one record, that's another record, and so on. So when all is said and done, it's gonna have this line once, and it's gonna have 2,000 of these. But that's one command, and it runs in an instant. The other one locked up my browser. It just wouldn't even work, right? This is an instant. So that's what's being built right here. I start off with insert variable equaling this whole thing. And then, next up, I look, here's another one called in array that some of you may have seen, maybe not. So 3 different functions that are new to you. We take the word here, which is in our for each loop that we're looping through, which is the words array, which is what? Right here, that's that array I built from the text file. So I would take each element in my for each loop here, call it word, and I look at that one word, one at a time, and I see if it's in the list array. If it's not, then I'll add on this little teeny piece right here, and a comma, because as you saw here, you have to put a comma between them, right? Make sense? So now I have this big, ginormous insert statement. However, I also have the final product would look something like that. You don't want to have a trailing comma there. That'll give you an error. So what do? I remove it right here. Okay, just using substring. That just truncates the comma, takes the last character off, right? And then I tack onto it a semicolon at the end. So now when all is said and done, I have a thing that has 2,000-ish of those parentheses there, and it's got a semicolon at the end like that, okay? Then I just run the query, and then it says done, then I close the connection. That's it, okay? So all I have to do, get a text file, put it in the right file path on my computer, and create the database. And I had considered making this function also create the database, or create the table, I should say. And I could do that if I know I'm the only one using it, but if not, then there's issues. What if they have enter a name that exists? And so I just decided I would force them to tell me what the name is, right? And I say them, but it's really me. So there's a really cool web page called textfiles.com/stories. And it's just full of a bunch of text files, right? It tells you rough how big they are right here. So the one that I was doing a minute ago is 5 oranges because it's 40,000, or almost 41,000. Brain damage, that looks good. Let's do this one. So I'm just gonna right click and I'm gonna save the link on my desktop here. I'm gonna open it up and look at it just to give it a quick glance. And it's like stuff like this, I just wanna delete, right? Just get rid of that, get rid of this. And then if I do Control A and I Shift Tab, it'll tab everything to the left until there's no more tabs. And just get rid of that dead space there. And that should be good enough. I think my function will get rid of that. Should get rid of all this. So this is pretty good. Let's go create a table. theoretically, all I have to do is move brain into here, which is the file path that I chose for my function here, and then call the database brain and the file brain. That's what I'm passing in. Theoretically, if I run this, it'll be fabulous, all right? So let's go. Hopefully we run it, it'll work. Done. See how quick that was? Now let's test it, see if it really worked though. That's the real trick. So go to brain, and sure enough, they're all in there. 500 words per screen, and so 1,000 words. That's quite a bit. It's pretty good. 1,000-ish. All right, good. So that's it. That's just one piece of the puzzle here, right? And that's the kind of thing that happens a lot in the real world. You just write a little application to do something that I'm not displaying anything on a web page. I'm not processing a web form or anything like that. Now, you could build this to where you could allow some user input where they could pass in some of these things and through a form. But this is just something for me in the back end that nobody else knows about, that I just run when I need to do something like this. I wrote it once and that's it, okay? So any questions about that process? That's step one. Now let's actually build the machine, okay? So what are some thoughts here? Let's do some non-coding for just a minute. So I have a seed word that's gonna be just the word magic. Let's start with that, all right? I'm gonna search the database for words that start with M, and then words where the second letter is A, and then the third letter is G, right? I need to search for that. So how do we do that in a database? I know there's a few people in this room that should know because they've taken my 1550 class. But how would I do something like that? Select star from, we're gonna go with brain, where, what? That is the question. Think in general when you have to do stuff like that. You've used these techniques before. Wildcards, right? So where name, that's the field name, is like something, good. There are two wildcards when it comes to database queries when you're doing in your where clause here. Percent is one of them. Percent is like what you think the star would be, right? So let's take a look at this. If I put this in and I said S%, this says select everything from brain where the name starts with an S and then has anything after it. That's what that means. So let's run that. And this will give me every word that starts with an S. See that? They all start with an S, okay? I could do something like this where I say percent S percent. That means there's just an S in there somewhere, right? Doesn't matter where it's at. And the percent can literally mean, remember our regular expression where things meant like 0 or infinite number of them, right? 0 or more. And so this could mean that the very first letter is nothing there, when there's nothing before the S, in other words, or that there's something before the S, but somewhere there's an S and then there's nothing after it with something after it, right? And it could be any number of somethings. Now, if you want to have explicitly a specific number of somethings, you do this. Underscore, yes, underscore. That means what I'm looking for in this query is a single something, letter or number, or whatever is in the field, followed immediately by an S. So the second letter is an S, followed by anything else, which could be nothing. So the word is would return here, but so would the word isn't. So this pattern here, though, says first letter has to exist. It could be anything. It could be also an S, right? If you had SS, that's not a word that I can think of, but that would fit the pattern. But first letter is something, second letter must be an S, third letter can be nothing or anything, and it can be an infinite number of letters after that, right? So if I'm looking for magic, start like if magic's my seed word, these are the queries I need. I need that, and then I need that, then I need 2 of them, and then G, and then I need 3 of them, and then I. Follow what I'm doing here? 1, 2, 3, 4, and C, right? So this is what we're looking for. I need to run that query and then find all of the words that fit that pattern. And then I need to pick one, right? Because there's going to be a bunch of them that start with M. There's going to be a bunch of them where the second letter is A and a bunch where the third letter is G. But I need to just pick one of each of those, right? And then put all of those words into an array, and that's my first phrase, right? So the way you do this is you say limit 1. The clause is called limit, and we're just saying limit 1. This means only give me one of them. But this will give you the same one every time. So every time you're looking for an M, it's just going to give you the first one it finds, right? So we want to sort it. We want to order it randomly. So you can actually use order by rand, parentheses, like that, right? So if we put that in each one of these, all right, so now, if I paste this in here, I'm going to get one of each of those, right? So let's see how this runs. It's going to give us 5 results, I think, 5 separate. So there's many and way, so that's that one, and then rights, there's the G in the 3rd spot, and then there's the I in the 4th spot, and the last one should have a C in the 5th spot, and it does. If I rerun that same query, though, I should get different letters, or different words. This time I got bank. Whoops, that's not right. Did I miss? Oh, matter, I missed matter. Sorry, I didn't see matter there. Yeah, okay. So that's matter, and then bank, and then urge, the G's in the 3rd spot, yep, and then we got the I in the 4th, and we got, there we go, medical. So that seems to be working. That's the query we're looking for. But we gotta build that in our code, right? So let's start in baby steps, okay? We're gonna do Karen's favorite thing.
I don't know.
We were talking about it yesterday. Starts with a nested, ends with loops. Nested loops.
Oh my gosh.
This is gonna be a triple nested loop when we're all done,
Oh, yeah.
okay?
It will be.
Yeah, but it's not that bad. We're gonna start off just doing baby steps here, and the first thing we're gonna do is we need to loop through that word right there. Now, it's a string, but it's a character array. You can actually treat it like that. So we'll just start with I is 0, and then I wanna loop while I is less than. So what we need to do here is loop through the length of the string, right? Which is 5. Notice I'm not using the size of function here, because that's when you're dealing with the size of an array, how many elements are in it. I'm talking about how long is the string. So I need to loop that many times, and then I++. That's our first loop. So we need to build something that will do this. It's gonna start off with nothing, then the next one it's gonna do one of those, next one it's gonna do 2 of those, without a space between them, of course, then 3 of them, right? So how do we do that? Yeah, so we're gonna need another variable here, so let's start off with, I'll just call it space. But now what I need to do is run a loop that will tack on, if I'm on the first element, which is, let's go with the 0th element. If I'm on the 0th element, I want to tack no underscores on, right? But if I'm on the 1th element, the first element, A, I want to tack on 1 underscore. And then when I'm on G, I want to tack on 2 underscores, right? And then we're gonna also tack the G onto that, so that'll be the 3rd character. So that's where the loop comes in. I'm gonna loop from 0 to whatever I'm on. Dig it? So for J is equal to 0, while J is less than I. Then we're gonna increment J. In here, we're gonna tack on the space, okay? So if I just simply say space dot equals, I'm for the moment gonna put a space after the underscore just so we can visually see it, but we don't wanna do that permanently, okay? But now, if I just echo space, this should look the way we want. Let's see. There we go. This is what we're looking for, right? This is exactly what we want. But we also want to tack onto the end of it the letter that we're on at the moment, right? So I want to tack on seed I. All right, so now that's what we're looking for, right? I'm going to remove the space in between those underscores. But now we have our string there that we're looking for. And if this were a larger word, we're good to go, like showmanship, like a really long word. It's exactly what we're looking for, right? We just need to now write a select statement that grabs those matching patterns, okay? Let's go back to the small word here, magic. Okay, I'm gonna move that space out because that won't work if we do that. That's what we really need right there. Okay, how do we feel about that? All right, so what's next here? We need to build some select statements here and grab some records based on this little pattern here, right? So what we really want is, you know, right, we want to show that. Now we're going to dump that into our select statement, okay? So what if I just, instead of echoing, I set a SQL variable equal to select star from brain, thank you. And we'll say where name is like that. And we'll get rid of this. That should be, well, that concatenation is going to get wonky. I'm going to just close it and concatenate it just to be safe. So sometimes this is really hard to think through. I think that's right. And then we'll get rid of the break here. And that's no need that. Percent, that. Select star from brain where name is like, I'm pretty sure that's it. We'll echo it and find out. We'll just do that right here. This is another reason why you echo out your SQL statements, because it can get messy. Oh, and let's put a line break at the end there. Looks good to me. Select star from brain where name is like that. Okay.
That space that you put in is gonna mess you up
What space?
at the beginning. The space before the M, is that gonna mess you up?
Oh, is that a space there? It is, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Yep.
it's concatenated onto that space.
Yep, you're right. There we go. That's what we needed. Thank you. Good catch. Okay, so this is good. Now we just need to make our extra pieces where we order it properly. So we're gonna do, oh, stop that. Order by random, limit 1. And that should be what we're looking for. And just to be safe, this is what you always do. Copy it, paste it, and see if it works. And by the way, if you guys didn't catch that space there, we would have caught it right now, right? This is why you do that. And sure enough, M-A-G-I-C. All right? So that's pretty sweet. We got the query working. Now that we have it, what do we want to do, though?
Words and display column.
Yeah, let's connect to the database and get them and dump them into an array or something, right? So I already have in my multi-exploder here, I'm just going to steal the one little string here for creating a database connection. And, you know, it's interesting when you see this, let me just put it down here for a second. When you see that, we made that into like 15 lines of code to connect to a database before, right? Because we wanted to make sure it would connect on our local server and on a remote server without having to have 2 different versions of the site. But the truth is, it's not that hard to connect. It's it. It really is just one line. We just had to do some extra stuff to make sure it connected properly, depending on our environment. Okay. So we're going to open up a connection above all of this right here. Just call it C for connect. So we call it C for connect, and then right in here, we're going to run that query, the MySQL query, right? So we're going to get, we'll just use the standard ones that we always use, is equal to MySQL. I found out what the I stands for. It stands for improved, right? It used to be just MySQL underscore query. Now it's MySQL improved underscore query. Fabulous, right? Okay, so there we go. We ran the query right there. And now it's going to, we need to notice here, we're only running it one time for each iteration of the loop, right? When I showed you over here, when we looked at the printout, what did it do? It printed out 5 select statements. Well, right after that select, we echoed it, and that's when it printed it. Well, instead of echoing, we're going to run it, right? So we're going to hit the database 5 times, or n number of times, however many words and so forth that we have, right? Or letters and words. Okay, so now let's take that, and we're going to loop through it and get the result and stick it into the array that's going to be our word, right? So let's go with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116 We'll call it the phrase array. Now, when we get the results, it's only gonna be one thing. So I say loop through it, but it's gonna be a while loop that loops one time. Because there's only one thing that's gonna be returned, right? Whatever the one word is that matches our pattern. So while so now we should have this whole phrase here. So at the end, I'm going to do a var dump. Looks like we got million, Carlson, side, oblivious, or obviously, sorry, and induced. M-A-G-I-C, and you can see the diagonal pattern. Let's run it again, and it looks like it's working. So this is working. We're on the right track here. Ooh, magical. Moment-laden magical upright office. What a poem. All right, so line 27, you do not need a semicolon on the last line of your code. So I left it off, because I know that some of you are going to be annoyed by that. So now we're almost there. All I really got to do, rather than doing a var dump, is what? Loop through the array and spit it out, right? For each. Space. The end. Making pain writes magical medical. Myself saw night arrive crunching. That's not bad, actually. That's kind of cool. Many had registered hiding device. Ooh. That's pretty cool. Now, see, with that one, here's where this becomes useful for sparking your own poem. Many had registered a hidden device. Like, it inspired me to change the wording a little bit. And now, ooh, what's this hidden device that many had registered? Let me think about that, and I'm going to write a story about that, right? That's the idea of this thing. Myself hallways writes stripped magical. I'm not sure what that means. Memories taken, huge visit office. See, that's almost a real thing there, right? You could tweak that a little bit and do something interesting. We'll do a couple more. Much can sigh, office indicating. Making catch, side, believe magical. Now look, believe magical together. That's cool that those two paired up. Believe magic. Mind taken light, relief choice. Okay, it's pretty good. Now, your assignment requires you to allow the user to choose from 3 different stories, right? You're gonna have 3 different tables. So right now, what I can do is just swap this out from brain to orange, and we'll be pulling from the orange database. Message watched higher devil bicycling. Oh, I like devil bicycling. That's kind of cool. Months cage higher entirely tobacco. Melon early bag society coincident. What does that even mean? My self-weighted sign series radic. Mean vein suggestive obviously glancing. That one's kind of interesting. It has potential, right? Melon way region advised directed. Anyway, you get the idea, right? So you will be required to, this will have to be a variable in your case, right? So your code will allow the user a drop-down list or something like that to choose where the stuff comes from, which table it's going to come from. All right, so this is working fine. It's great, it's good, everything's solid. Now what? How do we get it to do, like if I were to do magic show right now, what's going to happen? Show should be a new sentence.
Do you just break up your seed?
Yeah, break up the seed into, explode it into an array, right? So we'll change it now to seeds, and it's magic show. Actually, we'll say input, and we'll create a variable called seeds, and it is equal to an explode on a space of input, right? So that's part 1. Now, we now have this array that's called seeds that has 2 elements in it, magic and show. Your program requirements will be that you're not allowed to have anything other than a word or a space. So you have to do real-time JavaScript validation to make sure that the submit button won't even show, and this is explained in the instructions, that the submit button won't even show unless they only have words and spaces, right? All right, so now we have this seeds variable right here. Well, all we just simply need to do this for every word. There's our third loop, right? We'll just do a for each loop, and we'll loop through the seeds as seed. I'm choosing seed specifically because that's the word I already used down here, right? Put that in the braces there. And close the brackets. And now now it's working just fine, except for one last thing that we need to do is we need to just echo out a line break or something, right? It should give us what we need, so it'll break after each set, right? I think that's the right place for that loop, that break. We'll find out. Yeah. So SHOW. Yep. Muster watch edge accident branch. Is that even a word, branch? Sundials choose Georgia between, now see, that's a real sentence there. Sundials choose Georgia between X and Y, whatever the fill in the blank, but that inspires our poem, right? Moisture once sign delicacy tobacco. Stern change looks crowded. And of course, we can capitalize these and put punctuation on them and everything. But the cool thing now, give me a full sentence.
Is it Christmas yet?
Are we there yet?
Wow.
Now I'm gonna put a question mark there.
Christmas is gonna be a hard one, because it's got the long words.
If I put question mark there, that will screw things up, but you're gonna validate and prevent that from happening. So I will not do that. But here we go. Impunity escaped. That sounds awesome. Inheritance steps. So we have a word inheritance and then something about a child being born. This is interesting, right? Christmas and a child being born on Christmas?
Society, we gotta-
Interesting.
Main exploder method.
Yeah.
I thought you said you limited the words so that they were at least 3 characters long, but it still got your is it.
Where is? I don't see his.
You know, the database is 3 or more.
Oh, yeah, there's no words in the database that are bigger than, that are smaller than 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is, my seed phrase is just, right? So I could say,
I love dogs.
yeah, I do love dogs. I love dogs. Right, and so it'll find where the first letter is incident, right? I love that one we had before. That had some potential there. There's a lot of cool things in there. Decoyed policeman, right personnel.
Yeah, back up.
We can't, it's all random, even if
Write
it,
a function for that.
yeah. So that's basically it, guys. I mean, that's really, that's pretty simple. It's not that complicated of a code. Now, we got a few minutes, so let's talk about getting some user input to do this, right? Now, I'm gonna not bother with the validation part of it. Maybe if we have time, I will. But I'll just make sure I only put in valid data. You'll have to validate that in the assignment. But this is a pretty simple thing, and we can simply turn this into a function, right? The way I like to do that kind of stuff. So we'll make a function file here. Now that's included. Right now, if I run it, it'll just work just fine, but that's not quite what the effect we want to go for here, but it runs just fine, okay? But the idea is we want to pass in these parameters based on user input, right? So let's modify this function a little bit here. And let's actually turn this into a function. Right now, it's not a function, okay? So let's turn this whole thing here. And we'll call it generate poem. That looks good. What do we pass into it? Let's pass in the seed, right? Which we're gonna call input. What else we wanna pass in? Which table, right? Yeah, so we'll go with table. And so I can quickly change that right now. Just change that to table, done, okay? And we don't need this input anymore, right? And I think everything else is good. So we have it now, and in our index, let's just test it by just running it. So we're gonna say generate poem And we're gonna say, give me another phrase. No, I got one. Cats are evil. I know this to be true, and it's gonna come from the orange table.
So,
I should do it. Looks good to me, okay? Now, so rather than echoing here, what we're gonna do is have a variable that we'll call output. And it's gonna be equal to nothing at first, right? And then down here, we're gonna say output dot equals that, and then down here, we'll add that. Output dot equals, and I know I'm doing this quickly, but A, I want you guys to do this on your own, and B, this is stuff that you should have a pretty good grasp on at this point. So at the very end here, now we're gonna return output. Now I will have to echo it out for it to work, right? If I run it now, it'll just run the function, and we get a parse arrow on line 5. Let's make sure I didn't goof something up first.
Have a colon instead of semicolon.
Yeah. So now nothing should happen until I actually echo it out. So if I echo it, there. Now it's working. Carefully, happily, native fuss. Right? Cats are evil. But now we have the ability to create a web form, take in user input, validate it on the fly, which you'd have to build all that. But let's take in some input and test it all out. And then action is, we're gonna just go to ourself, and I'm gonna tack on a little URL variable that just says v equals true or something. So it'll go to ourself, it'll tack that onto the URL, right? All right, so let's just start there. All right, so now I'm gonna just enter a word, hello, and when I click submit, it tacks on the true up there, so it seems that it's processing just fine. Okay. Next up here, we're gonna check and see if it was processed, right? So if get, what is it, v? Let's copy that. So we're gonna say is set that and that is equal to true. Then, we got enough there? Yeah. Then we're going to do something here, right? What's the something here we're gonna do? We're going to get phrase, let's go with text equals, and I'm not gonna bother with error checking right now, I'm just gonna assume that they actually put something. You guys will have to do that for sure. And we need to give that a name down here. Name is equal to user in, okay. User in, we get that. And semicolon, so now we can change this to text. Let's just start there, right? Refresh. Cancel that. Now it's gonna have the old poem there. No poem, yeah. All right, so let's go iceberg. ICE, that looks good to me, all right? So let's say iceberg Titanic. Looks good to me. Titanic, yeah. So there you go, and that's the basic idea there, right? We want to do some validation, because if I try to say, hello there, that's going to maybe give us some issues. Did it work? HELLOTHER. Still worked?
well, because it's not in your database, there's no characters in your database, right?
Oh, it just, yeah, because it didn't return anything that had an exclamation point. Well, actually, no, because it should, like, if I just said hello, theoretically, yeah, it's gonna give me the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th word in the sentence. Has to have the 6th letter be an exclamation, and that would return nothing. So that's maybe kind of already built-in protection there, yeah. But I still am expecting validation on this, right? And we also need to put in the database, right? We can do that real quick. User in 2, get more creative with your names, please. All right, and we'll just say text 2, user n2, and text 2, right? And I'm gonna do, and that would be a drop-down box. Obviously, they can't just make up a word there, okay? But here we go. So this is the phrase, which is Iron Maiden, and we're gonna use the brain database this time. Violent afternoon. Make card things called card violent afternoon. You get the idea of how it works, what's going on there? So this is the reason I wanted to show you this project. A, it's fun to take a real world thing that was invented long before computers and make a program out of it. And two, the first half of this was a very common problem that you have in the programming world, which is I need to write an application to do X. But before I can write that application, I have to write another application to set the stage for me. And that happens not just in PHP. You know, I could have done all that with C++ or something, right? I could have used whatever language I wanted to insert into my database. But the first thing was I had this humongous database insert I needed to do. Well, I don't need to write a web page for that. I just need to build a script that would run it. That's a very common thing. I do that kind of stuff all the time. Then we build the program based on this cool database we made. Now, you could just make the database manually, right? Which is ridiculous. Hire a bunch of data entry clerks and have them do it. That's fine too. But this is a way to solve a simple problem with programming. All right, what questions do you have?